my sisters and bro- to my sisters and brothers in the Muslim. This evening, I would delve into the present military buildup in the South Caribbean Sea that is supposedly there for the purpose of making war on drugs, and review the entire process from a different perspective from that which we are bombarded with in the media. Because from 1997, I began my journey as a Muslim speaking on the illicit trades of Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean. To date, 2025, I have written and published 5 books on the illicit trades in the Caribbean. My first 3 books, I'm presently in the process of revising them. Book 1, Book 2 has been revised to 2025 and is now republished. And Book 3 is on its way. I am simply preparing for my departure from the dunya. So where I am coming from this afternoon to my sisters and brothers in the Muslimeen is speaking as a Muslim who has spent a lot of time and effort understanding this game that is the drug trade, the illicit gun trade, human smuggling, and then money laundering in the Caribbean. And then taking that knowledge to strip apart what the present American President Donald Trump and his White House is describing as what is the nature of the illicit trades in the Caribbean, which he is using to justify a military incursion and presence off the coast of Venezuela. Answering the question, is what he is saying true and correct on the nature of the illicit trades in 2025? And would that military incursion make any difference? Because it is impacting the Caribbean island chain. It is impacting specifically Trinidad and Tobago and our relationship with Venezuela. And to date, my sisters and brothers, it has made no difference to the illicit trade. It has disrupted nothing. The pipelines keep pumping, the product keeps moving. Where the ships are sitting down, that is a dead zone, and that is what I'm here to explain. So it is not a play in the war on drugs. It is a geopolitical play to line up military force against a proxy of China and Russia in the Caribbean, Venezuela. And that means if you are lining up against Venezuela, then you are also lining up against Cuba and Nicaragua, which raises the grave threat of war, which is going to wash over all of us in the Caribbean island chain. So let me begin now by giving a rundown of what is the illicit drug trade in 2025. The first thing we must understand is that the cocaine market in the United States of America has collapsed. The volume of kilo bricks that once left Colombia, Peru, and moved into the United States via Central America, into Mexico, and then into the United States, using the 8 land bridges that connect Mexico to America, that is gone. That is, in fact, a historical lesson. What is, in fact, assaulting these 8 land bridges in significant volume is a menu of illicit drugs, illicit synthetic drugs, especially methamphetamine. There is a big hurrah in America about fentanyl, but there are much more meth addicts in America than fentanyl addicts. The big hoo-ha in America over fentanyl is because of the number of white children, young people who are dying from fentanyl overdoses. And they view that as a grave threat to the master race. Because it simply does not bother them when it's non-white people in the internal colonies of America being decimated by illicit drugs. And there's overwhelming evidence that proves that you have political agents and agents of the state in America who were in fact trafficking cocaine into South Central LA. So what we must understand, the kilo bricks that are leaving South America are all, the majority of them are going to Europe. Europe is the new boom cocaine market. But the significant majority of kilo bricks going to Europe is going by containerized cargo, not by little go-fast boats crossing the Southern Caribbean Ocean to go to the Dominican Republic or to Puerto Rico. So if you were here to stop any trade across the Southern Caribbean, you are supposed to pack up those ships off the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, not where they are. And the largest single exporter of cocaine in South America and in the world via containerized cargo is Ecuador. But there are no ships off of Ecuador. There is no threat to Ecuador because the regime running Ecuador is a compliant pro-US regime. So they get a free ticket to pass go. So what we must understand is that the nature of the game has changed dramatically in the Caribbean, Latin America, in the 21st century. And it has changed because there is no longer a single dominant transnational organized crime group that is dominating the game of Latin America and the Caribbean, Africa, and Europe. There are now 2. You have the Colombian Dons, and you have a group of Mexicans who are not affiliated to the Colombian Dons and are intent on replacing them with their power. So throughout the Caribbean, by the third decade of the 21st century, the Mexican group, who I call Pax Mexicana, is common throughout the Caribbean. They are in Trinidad and Tobago, they are in Jamaica, they're in Puerto Rico, And they control the European market in conjunction with their European transnational organized crime partners. So the Colombian guns find themselves needing to dump kilo bricks in Europe, but they simply just cannot get the tonnage into Europe because Europe is hostile territory. So they are being squeezed all around. Their entire business model is in crisis. In their illicit warehouses in Colombia, they have kilo bricks reaching the rafters of the ceilings of the roofs of these warehouses. There are mountains of coca leaves rotting in the sun and the rain because they continue to increase production of coca leaves, increase production of kilo bricks, and they have nowhere to absorb that volume of product. So they are literally looking to flood Europe with tons and tons of kilo bricks. And a certain proportion of this tonnage is passing through the Caribbean. But where Trump has his military presence, they don't pass through there because Venezuela is no longer a player in the kilo bricks game. All of these trafficking networks to Europe and before Europe to Africa and from Africa into the Middle East and Asia have shifted outside of Venezuela into the Guyanas and Brazil. Whilst the Colombians are concentrating on Ecuador. So Venezuela as a production point, marginalized. Venezuela as an export point, marginalized. What Venezuela is in fact is an intermediate zone between Colombia and the Guyanas and Brazil. That is all it is today. So you are now facing off of Venezuela, and Venezuela is of no importance in the game today. None. There is no trade in Venezuela meriting that contingent size of your military presence off Venezuela. None. Because what is actually passing through Venezuela as a transit zone is marginalized to the entire trade in the world. But the fact of the matter is you are not going where the trade is. So a good place if you want to touch the trade is to park it off in the Atlantic Ocean between South America and Africa. If you want to say you are handling the cocaine trade, but you see, that traffic is going to Europe, it's not going to America. If you want to say you are handling the traffic to America, then you have to shut down Ecuador. You have to make sure that all of your containerized ports in America have proper interdiction structures, because every single container shipment coming into America is a target to put kilo bricks on to get into America. But it's all small volumes. Whilst Mexico is churning out is a gigantic factory of illicit synthetic drugs that is being shipped across the 8 land bridges to you because Mexico is an offshore manufacturing point for America. So even the lettuce and the tomato they put on a franchise burger when you buy it in America is grown in Mexico and exported in these huge tractor trailers to America. So the volume of trucks crossing every day nonstop and the volume of people, humans, crossing every day nonstop. That is where you have the trafficking arteries. And that is why you turn Mexico into the producer of illicit synthetic drugs for America. But America created its own problem because American politicians and policing insist that you jail an addict. You do not expose an addict to treatment. You put them in jail. So when you fill your prisons with addicts, they soon learn that supply follows demand into the prisons. So they corrupt your prison structure. And the hardcore gangland within your prison soon take over that illicit drug trade into your prisons, and the prisons become an extension of what is going on in the streets. So with your hardline stance where you believe jail, and this talk about zero tolerance, jail cures everything. So you jail an addict, you don't put an addict in treatment. You underinvest in prevention. Because what we all must understand, the synthetic opioid epidemic was started in America in 1991 by the Food and Drug Administration in America, who made it legal for a single company to manufacture and sell oxycodone and telling people that oxycodone does not get you addicted as heroin and other opioids, which was a lie. So you turned a company and a family who owned that company into multi-millionaires by turning them into legal pushermen. And soon you started to have pain pill mills all over America, where people were just clocking to these pain pill mills run by a doctor just to get opioid pills on prescription. And then they will take those prescriptions and go and sell. And when people could not afford to buy an oxycodone pill, they started to buy heroin. So they raised the dead heroin market from the grave. And that then gave the impetus to transnational organized crime to now produce synthetic opioids that gives you more bang for the dollar than heroin. So they went into now producing fentanyl derivatives. So in America, you spend no money on preventative education. You do not invest in preventative, teaching people Because what that will do, that will mean you have to teach people what tobacco and alcohol does to them. Because they are two legal drugs that destroy the human body and human families as if they are illicit drugs, but they continue to be legal. So in your bid to answer to the tobacco lobby and the alcohol lobby and the sugar lobby, you take your hands off of that. So you have people walking around 3, 4, 5, and 600 pounds because they are addicted to sugar. You have binge drinking until you are stumbling drunk, and you have the smoking of the tobacco until you are riddled with cancer and collapsed lungs, etc. And what has been discovered in America, and this is a lesson we must all learn from Trinidad and Tobago, is that any culture that has a predisposition to drink alcohol in binge sessions until you are stumbling drunk, when introduced the methamphetamine, you take the amphetamine as if there is no tomorrow. There is a correlation between binge drinking alcoholism and switching to methamphetamine use, where you become meth heads. And that is why meth heads are so prevalent amongst white culture in America. And you all and all everybody must understand, meth has long been on the streets in Trinidad and Tobago. And it is only a matter of time that it is going to get in amongst the binge drinking cultures of Trinidad and Tobago. And with supply available on the streets, it is going to spread like wildfire. So the threat is here in TNT, facing us in our face. Because what we must understand, my sisters and brothers, this game of the illicit trades is a very serious game. It is a grave and dangerous game that presents grave and serious dangers to any social order, because it has the means to collapse a social order and turn it into anarchy, as we have seen in living color in Trinidad and Tobago from 2017 to 2024, where the rivers of blood flew without shame, no discrimination. That is the reality, straight out of the game. So what is happening to us is that we are now faced with a military incursion in South Caribbean. But the people who say they are here to fight a war on drugs have a serious drug addiction problem in their homeland, in their home world, that they cannot handle. Because the tools they are using to handle it have failed miserably. And it has a momentum of its own. So what you understand in the United States of America, when you are a member of a police department on the beat in America, you in fact have to be a pharmacist. That is required knowledge, because the amount of different addicts you meet who are in overdose on a given beat patrol. And I'm talking about patrol officers. So it's as reached a stage now where you have members of American PDs on patrol walk with Narcan because they come up, they get the report 911, they go to the scene, and the young person in the car is overdosing on fentanyl or heroin. And they have learned how to administer that Narcan to break that overdose to save their life. We live the grave risk in Trinidad and Tobago that soon that will reach to us here. And we will now have to keep a can of Narcan in our home and walk places when we leave it home. Because we will never know when we need it. But I can assure you, my brothers and sisters, there is no Narcan for meth addiction. And a meth head is a very, very, very unhinged, dangerous individual to deal with, especially when they have a gun. And I would really like to know if some of those graphic murders in Trinidad and Tobago from 2017 to 2024, if they weren't strung out on meth and running a rage. So you're coming to an area, you have packed up your military entourage in a dead zone in the Southern Caribbean where there is no activity going on. What we must understand, the last video issued by Southern Command where Trump spoke about the boat that was destroyed. It was subsequently revealed that the boat was destroyed in conjunction with the naval assets and the air assets of the Dominican Republic. It was way to the north. And it is the Dominican Republic Navy who then picked up the floating bales of cocaine after you killed the two men on the boat who had switched off the engines on the boat, therefore they were not fleeing. So in international law that governs interdiction in international waters, they were not fleeing. They were waiting for you to come, board them, arrest them, and go with them. You kill the both of them with a missile attack. And then the Dominican Republican Navy came and picked up the floating cocaine from the sea and made not a single statement about the two men on the boat, what happened to them. So you are aiding and abetting murder on the high seas. Your role is to pick up the floating bales of cocaine to prove that it was a drug boat. And therefore it is right to kill them. So having bales of cocaine on a boat in international waters, according to Massa, is now a capital crime. And you will be executed without due process of law. So they are white vigilantes. As in the days when our ancestors were all enslaved. That is what it amounts to. So you have been there over 3 weeks, and the sum total of all your action is 4 irrelevant boats, 2 of which had small loads of Colombian cocaine compressed, and the other 2 supposedly cocaine. That's it, sum total. But you are going nowhere. but we move on. Now let us go to America's discourse of what is the illicit trades. One, Trump and his White House does not speak to the fact that the cocaine market of America has collapsed and the volume of kilograms going into America has fallen by more than 50%. By more than 50% it has fallen. Entire swaths of the cocaine economy of South and Central America are now in acute depression. And that is why the poor people earlier, when Biden was there, were forming these caravans and marching to the Mexican border with America, looking to cross into America. Because the entire cocaine economy that kept them employed from Colombia going straight into Guatemala has collapsed. Because there's simply no tonnage moving through their countries as before to afford them a living. The men on those boats that you are killing are low-paid labor. They are not shakers and movers in the trade. That is ordinary low-paid labor. You are killing workers in the trade. You are not taking out shakers and movers. No shaker and mover in the trade rides no boat with any glue on it. They fly private executive jets. And they have multiple multi-million US dollar residences around the world. And they are faceless. So what is happening? The dislocation in the cocaine market in America is so bad. And the Colombian dons have literally lost the American cocaine market to the Mexicans. Is that what is happening is that war has broken out within the business model of the Colombian dons. You have factions at present within the Colombian don business model at war with each other in Colombia, looking to remove who presently rules and replace it with a new body exercising dominance over the Colombian business model. So right now, Colombia is in the hands of an internecine war within the business model. And the war has now spread to the Cauca Valley. That is the largest single cocaine producing region in Colombia. And that is also impacting the ganja fields. But the fact of the matter is, Pax Mexicana has its own ganja fields. They don't depend on growing ganja in Colombia. Do you all, my sisters and brothers, understand how much ganja is grown in Guyana? In Guyana, when the police make a little move up the Demerara and the Berbice River, and they raid a series of ganja plantations, you feel it's a loss of land? In Guyana, you get ganja plantations 15 and 20 acres in size. The smallest is 5 acres. Can you all visualize, my sisters and brothers, a 15 acres of ganja? That is ganja like dirt. And that is all along the rivers of Guyana going up into its hinterland. So it's no longer Colombia for ganja. ganja is now all over. So you have ganja growing centers all over. So they don't tell you about that. They don't talk about that. So you ask yourself the fundamental question, all that ganja you are growing in Guyana, where is it going? It is certainly, it is going, yes, it is going into Brazil, and it is coming up the Eastern Caribbean chain. And remember, when it leaves the coast of South America from the Guyanas and Brazil, the first stop in the Eastern Caribbean trafficking chain is Tobago. Tobago is the first stop. So in the game right now in Trinidad and Tobago, Tobago is more important than Trinidad. So while everybody looks across the Gulf to Venezuela and constantly talk about all what is coming from Venezuela and what is going there, that's a great infatuation with the Gulf and Venezuela. Nobody speaks to the fact that the largest single volume of illicit product is being moved from South America up the Eastern Caribbean island chain in the Caribbean. So Trump and his military forces haranguing wrong. And on that Eastern Caribbean pipeline, my sisters and brothers, they have semi-submersibles running on it. So if you feel it's boat, the majority of the tonnage is being moved by semi-submersibles that leaving the coastline of Guyana, Suriname, French Guyana, Brazil, moving up the Eastern Caribbean, going across the Atlantic to Africa and Europe. That is the hottest zone in this part of the world. Why then are you going up the Eastern Caribbean? Because the largest single, Martinique and Guadeloupe, are your two big pipelines to Europe, and they are part of France. You have the US Virgin Islands, you have the British Virgin Islands, you have the Dominican Republic, and you have Puerto Rico, which is also part of America. So you're not telling us anything about this new reality. The fact that your cocaine market has collapsed, and there's a whole new game in town that is impacting the Caribbean entirely different from what you say is our reality. The second thing you're not telling us, because you don't speak to it at all, at all, at all. All you speak about are the Colombian dons and the Mexican cartels. And you talk about cartels. There are no cartels, there never were any cartels in the business. Medellin and Cali were not cartels, they were federations made up of various investors who bonded together for a common aim. A cartel is entirely different from a federation. So that is a myth Massa created to project white supremacist power in the non-white world. So all you talk about is the Colombian dons and the Mexican cartels. Which Mexican cartels? Because the Mexican affiliates of the Colombian dons, the good old days of El Chapo, they love to beat El Chapo. But the fact of the matter is they do not speak to the fact that you have a Mexican federation that is much more powerful than the Mexican affiliates of the Colombian dons. You have a Mexican federation that is much more powerful than the Colombian dons. And they don't speak to that reality at all. They deny the existence of that reality because if they admit that there is a group of Mexican traffickers who are bigger than the Colombians and their Mexican affiliates, that shows the failure of the war on drugs because that body of traffickers emerged at the height of your war on drugs. So in spite of your war on drugs, the game continues to evolve into evolutionary stages that are so much more powerful than the previous one, which perfectly illustrates to all of us in the global south that your war on drugs is a farce. It's a fake war. The war is real. So you feel that you can deny the existence of this group. And we who do the research on the game on a daily basis have been seeing the footprints of this group since the late 1990s. And my sisters and brothers, I want you all to understand that at the outcome of the wars from 2017 to 2024 is that Pax Mexicana now controls North Trinidad and Tobago. And the Colombian dons now control from Chaguanas to Barco. They are backed in a corner. And you must understand, because we are living here, the Colombian dons have a history in the Caribbean island chain of destabilizing countries in order to turn them into narco states. Learn from the lesson of Haiti. In 2004, it was a Colombian drug militia formed and trained in the Dominican Republic, who marched armed from the Dominican Republic into Haiti with impunity because the Colombian dons control the Dominican Republic. That's their own. To then remove Jean Bertrand Aristide from power. And thereafter take control of Haiti. So it's the Colombian dons and the drug trafficking oligarchy of Haiti that took over after Aristide. In 2024, it was the Colombian dons who killed President Jovenel Moïse and reduced Haiti to the anarchy that it is today. The Colombians put out the hit on him and carried it out. And it was a DEA informer who knocked on the president's personal household because the earthquake of 2010 destroyed the presidential palace, so he was living in his personal house in Pétionville, Port-au-Prince. And he knocked on the gate, and the Republican guards on duty who were part of the Colombian Don plot opened the gate for them and let them in on the procedure to kill President Moïse. And then the entire Haitian society collapsed even further. And do you know why they killed Moïse? Because by 2021, Pax Mexicana had already set up shop in North Haiti. So they did not even want the remnants of the Haitian state present in Haiti as they squared up with Pax Mexicana to the north. And Pax Mexicana now controls the entire north and west and east coast of Jamaica. They are also in control of Puerto Rico. So what Donald Trump, the reality he speaks to of Latin America and the Caribbean is a myth. They operate on a myth, whilst we live in it every day. And our politicians and the national security apparatuses of the Caribbean that serve these politicians also speak the same myth. Because no politician in the Caribbean dares to stand up and speak the truth of what is the game. Because then that will indicate to those who are listening to them, if this is the truth of the game, what you are doing to mitigate it is inadequate, insufficient, and is a total waste of time. Because in Jamaica and in Trinidad and Tobago, we have instituted in Jamaica a state of emergency after state of emergency. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have fallen back on state of emergency. And that certainly did not stop the creation of a dual business model being present in our islands. So no longer are we under the control of the Colombian dons. We now have two business models. For those of you all who want to understand the apparent change in gangland of North Trinidad, understand now that that is the order of power of Pax Mexicana. And if you want to understand what is going on from Chaguanas to Barco and what is to come, understand that the Colombian dons down are still in charge down there. Look at the stark difference between what is going on in North Trinidad and what is going on from Conupia going straight down to Barco. And realize two different business models, two different orders of power, two different strategies, two different models of earning, two different disciplines. The Colombian dons is highly indisciplined, reckless. Pax Mexicana demands the discipline of a military order. They expect their soldiers to be disciplined as if they are members of a military special forces unit. That's the difference. So Trump then comes with the talk about the cartel of the suns that is in Venezuela. And that is the entire justification for parking up your fleet outside of Venezuela in international waters. This mythic, fictitious cartel you have created that everybody in the game laughs at. Well, you are telling me that Maduro, of all the people in the world, is a shaker and mover in that cartel. You are telling me that that cartel is so powerful that it rubs shoulders with the Colombian dons. How can there be a cartel in Venezuela that rubs shoulders with the Colombian dons, where Venezuela has no appreciable drug production? Venezuela has no appreciable plant production of coca and opium poppy bush. Venezuela has no appreciable production of synthetic illicit drugs. And Venezuela has no appreciable transshipment sector out of Venezuela into the world that matches up to what you say is the cartel of the sun. So you have created a mythic cartel to justify incursions into Venezuela by your military. And you are justifying it with our own massa concept, where massa has the right to pronounce who is fit and unfit. Massa has the right to pronounce without evidence who is a criminal and who is not. And Massa has the right to take out that unfit criminal non-white with impunity, without the rule of law. So Trump is therefore telling us that he has the right to take us back to the days of Christopher Columbus and 1492 going forward with Hernan Cortez and Pizarro and all of the looters and murderers that descended upon from Africa to us over here. That is what he's insisting to every single one of us. That they have the right by dint of being the inherently superior master race of the world to watch us, pronounce us unfit, pronounce us a threat, and to terminate us by any means necessary with impunity. So there is no rule of law. That is what it has reached to. So you create a fictitious cartel, you present not a single shred of evidence. There is no evidence. Every single organization that rebuts your position, you attack them and you look to silence them. And you are insisting that they are terrorists. They are narco-terrorists, and you have the right to go anywhere they are in the world without the rule of law and take them out. My grandmother insisted to me in growing up, when your neighbor house on fire, wet yours. So when that happens to any one of our neighbors, ring your ears because it will come to us. Because of my position, it is very easy to pronounce me a narco-terrorist. And worse yet, it is very easy to pronounce me terrorist, period, because I'm a Muslim. And I'm going down with the massa politics. So it's very easy to just put up my picture and wave it about and say, terrorist. He is now on the terrorist watch list. And then you just pop my neck, and that's it. All over. So in other words, do not resist. Your to shut up and surrender. That is an empire in crisis. That is a minority race in the world that suffers from an acute fear of a black planet. And now they are embracing war to save them from the inevitable downfall. where they are no longer the masters of the world. They are in panic. So every single point they have made, every single point is fake, it's mythic. What then is the agenda? The agenda then is to engage with a proxy of China and Russia in Venezuela and see how far this entire game will go. Because what you want space to be given you from China and Russia. So you're playing brinksmanship with Venezuela that washes over Trinidad and Tobago and all of us. Because as the Africans teach us, when the elephants fight, the grass gets trampled. But what we must understand is, we must follow closely. Is China and Russia willing to surrender and back down? No. Learn from the support China gave Iran when Iran was faced with the onslaught from Massa and the Zionist tip of the spear in the heart of the Muslim lands. Note carefully. And they continue to stand firm with Iran. And remember, Iran is also standing firm with Venezuela. So what we must understand, my sisters and brothers, the debate in Venezuela presently has reached the stage now. The government is not taking part in the debate. They have shut their mouth. But members of the alternate left in Venezuela especially are continuously raising public debate, asking how far has China and Russia armed Venezuela in order for Venezuela to defend itself from this incursion. And if you look at the weaponry that China displayed recently on the 80th anniversary of its victory over Japanese aggression, the weaponry China displayed, especially its missiles, we already know last week that 10 brand new J-10 fighter aircraft from China landed in Venezuela, where their full avionics in place, their full training for the Venezuelan crew, spare parts, everything. We already know that Venezuela is hooked up to Russia's and China's independent navigation system. That means Venezuela does not use GPS as Iran. So it makes no sense. You can't shut them down to attack them. Venezuela as Iran is not on all your grids for you to lock them out. So the question to Trinidad and Tobago is, did China hand to Venezuela and have trained the Venezuelan military to use their anti-ship hypersonic missiles? Did Russia also hand to Venezuela their hypersonic missiles and have trained the Venezuelans to use them? We already know that Venezuela has Russian Sukhoi fighter jets, and they already have the S-300 Russian air-to-air defense system. Do we know if Russia upgraded the S-300 for the S-400? So when you are Trinidad and Tobago and you actually feel that you could embrace this fake war on drugs and insist that you are supporting it because it is a war on drugs, do you factor into this support that it goes to a hot war and we get some hypersonic missiles falling on Atlantic LNG? Huh? Because we have chosen our side. So the fundamental question is, we already know that China has indicated to Trump, Xi Jinping has indicated to Trump that the red line in his sand has been drawn around Venezuela by China for Trump. We already know that Russia made it clear. Is Trump then willing to go to war to test China and Russia and Iran to see how far they're willing to go or not to go? And what is going to happen to Trinidad and Tobago in that event of war? So these are questions, pertinent questions that have to be asked. But as usual in Trinidad and Tobago, all the media is interested in is making money. And the entire conversation in the country is led off on and following trails and tracks, down a non-existent Gucci. Because the fundamental reality of the entire affair had not been addressed in Trinidad and Tobago in any manner by no political party. Because what happens to all of the politicians in Trinidad and Tobago is that their crude ignorance of the game is now showing by leaps and bounds. So you're speaking to a reality that don't exist. You're projecting outcomes on myth. So that means this is a dangerous time for the Caribbean. Because this week that has started here, Trump either has to attack or to pack up and leave. The charade cannot go on for much longer. He has now to attack or to leave. And what is happening to him? He faces a daunting mid-year election campaign next year. And if he loses control of the Congress, he is going to spend the rest of his term a lame duck president under serious assault from the Democrats and renegade cells within the Republican Party. So he has now to do something utterly reckless or to simply walk away. That is where we have reached. And that is, I have no pause. Thank you very much.
Brother Darius. At this segment, anyone who has questions, you are free to unmute your mic and ask question to the lecturer, inshallah. Right. It seems that they're trying to absorb the amount of knowledge that you rest on them, which was quite, to me, enjoyable. Um, but my question to you, Brother Darius, would be moving from the neutral stance that our country once took, as all the prime ministers before and with CARICOM, do you think that the, as I should say, the pro-Trump approach given by our new administration, would that have lasting effects going down the line, or will it be isolated only to this present government with
No,
regards to the fallout from the other countries?
what has happened is that the present government is trying to walk apart by saying that it is supporting a war on drugs within the rule of law. So when you listen carefully to the address at the United Nations General Assembly, the statement is, we are supporting the war on drugs of America within the rule of law. So, and the reason why we are supporting it is because of the reality of 2017 to 2024. Now, if you understood the reality of 2017 to 2024, and you understood it well, then you work backwards and you would have realized that supporting Trump's war on drugs, that version of the war on drugs, does not mesh with our reality of 2017 to 2024. Because what he says is the war on drugs is not what happened to us 20 to 2024. And his solution to the drug scourge is no solution. It's not fit for purpose when he has the ships. Because if he was really interested in the drug scourge, he will have them pack up outside Ecuador. He will have them pack up outside the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico and have them pack up outside in the Atlantic. That's where they are. But where they are is facing off Venezuela. And the most damning indictment of Trump's war on drugs is this talk of the cartel of the sons. And Maduro is the head of the cartel. So I do not see how you can support a war on drugs that is driven by mythic versions of what is the reality and expect mitigating outcomes. That in itself is lunacy. Because how can you expect to mitigate a problem when you do not even visualize the problem in its reality? How can myth diagnose a reality and then enable you to prescribe effective, potent, mitigating intervention? How? So it just don't add up. It has no inherent logic in it. What it is a geopolitical game. So whereas you have elements within CARICOM who are saying flat, what you are doing there is endangering the entire Caribbean with war. You are not addressing that issue at all. What you are saying is that the Caribbean was never a zone of peace. That's not the issue. The issue is what they are saying is you are jeopardizing the entire Caribbean with war, which the maximum leader of the present government does not speak to at all. The threat of war. The geopolitical threat of war with China, Russia lined up with Venezuela, facing off with Trump in our backyard. So there's no address of that reality. So all it comes down to is we have a problem. We have a problem with the cartels, and we need the war on drugs. Punto final. But let me say something now. And this is the fundamental reality I pose to you all. And this is a question I'm bringing to you all. In the Caribbean island chain, every single apex type 1 trafficking island has the lowest murder rate in the Caribbean. The premier trafficking island in the Caribbean is the Dominican Republic, and it has a murder rate and a murder toll that is one of the lowest in Latin America and the Caribbean. Why is Trinidad plagued with endemic violence, gun violence, when Trinidad and Tobago is not even a type 2, a tier 2 trafficking nation? All this myth you hear spoken on the media of Trinidad and Tobago about all the drugs coming to Trinidad. What drugs coming to Trinidad and Tobago compared to Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico and Martinique and Guadeloupe? What drugs? So the fundamental question for Trinidad and Tobago to answer, the politicians and the national security apparatus, is why a country that is not even a tier 2 trafficking island in the Caribbean has a level of endemic gun violence unlike a tier 1 country. Why? And for years I have worked on that and I've answered the question in my revised drug books. I have answered the question in detail. Why is the violence so endemic in Trinidad and Tobago? Because we never had volumes of illicit drugs coming into and exiting Trinidad and Tobago that swamped our national security apparatus. It is the failure of successive political regimes from the 1970s to now to depoliticize the national security apparatus, to let it evolve, to face the threats head on, face on, that appeared over time, so that it will be fit and proper to ensure our public safety. The national security apparatus continues to be trapped in time. It continues to be in stasis. It is totally politicized. And it is therefore unfit to face a threat that today has reached its fifth evolutionary stage. And our national security apparatus still in its 1970s. That is why we're so violent. All of the drug trafficking oligarchs of Trinidad and Tobago, who are billionaires off of dope, they don't bring no dope in Trinidad and then export it from Trinidad, you know. Their product leaves Colombia and heads straight to the United States and is handed over to members of their family in the United States, who then sells it on the wholesale markets of America. They don't bring nothing in Trinidad and sell it back and back out here. So what's left is just these little stragglers who then proceed to kill each other for straggling dope. Because Trinidad is no player. The largest single illicit drug market in Trinidad and Tobago is imported ganja. Trinidad has the largest imported ganja market in the Caribbean. And that in itself drives violence. So, no war on drugs is going to stop the violence in Trinidad and Tobago. What is going to stop the violence in Trinidad and Tobago is when you get up one morning and decide as a ruling politician to emancipate our national security apparatus and let them do their job. This way in which you want to micromanage them and you want to ensure that who becomes commissioner of police is kissing you, and who comes head of SSA is kissing up to you, and who comes defense chief of staff is kissing up to you. The day that ends and the best and brightest rise to the top and run the show how it's supposed to be run, we are going to get a dramatic change in this country. Until such time, the violence continues. Because it is not causing the violence. It's weak organs to ensure public security.
Sir, shukran. We have a question from in the chat. Assalamu alaikum. 300 vials of fentanyl went missing recently from a hospital in Trinidad. Do you think we need to be on the lookout for it in our underworld or even in schools?
The vials of fentanyl were literally heisted. It was a professional job. And what you must understand, those vials of fentanyl, they were injectable. That is the easiest thing to smuggle. You put them on a swallower, you put them on a mule, and you put them on a flight to the Dominican Republic, to Puerto Rico, and to America, and you carry it up there and you make your big money. It's as simple as that. That was a shot across the bow, a message to Trinidad and Tobago, and everybody breaks stick in their ears. And whenever there is more fentanyl in the stores for the public health system, they're going to keep putting on the same ripoff again and again. Because they just load it up on a sword, you load it up on a mule, and you carry it out of here, and you get good money for it, US dollars for it, where you are carrying it. It makes no sense to sell it here for $30 when you can carry it abroad and get US dollars for it. And injectable, legal grade fentanyl sells for much higher than knockoffs.
If there's any more questions, you can unmute your mic, or you can also utilize the chat area in order to post your questions. Again, believers, this is a serious topic, and by the mercy of Allah, we have been afforded the time of one of the best to ever do it, to ever walk in this field. So I would encourage you all to make the best of the opportunity to ask Brother Darius anything under the sun, and I am more than certain that you would get the adequate response, inshallah. Well, it seems as this at this point we have no more questions to ask. Unfortunately, I was hoping that you would have been flooded with questions, but I suspect that the audience is soaking up the information that was given to them today. I know for some it may be quite heavy because you are now the veil has been lifted from the eyes of those who were not aware of the reality of the time. So, on behalf of myself, the Wazir of Dawah and Public Relations, on behalf of my Imam, Imam Sadiq Razi, I want to extend a heartfelt thanks once again, Brother Darius, for taking the time to have a chat with us, to teach us, and to leave us with something that would be of, how should I say it, would be of maximum benefit to us as a community and as a people moving forward.
Thank you. My sisters and brothers in the Muslims have always been close to my heart. They are special to me. And as long as I have the health and as long as I have the strength and the breath, I shall always answer your call.
Sincerely appreciated. May Allah continue to bless you, grant you long life, health, and strength. And I do look forward to many more opportunities to sit and soak in the knowledge that you have to impart on us, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam.
Shukran and salam.